The message from Earth arrived during a feast. The Sovereignty Council had been celebrating the annexation of 3 new star systems when the transmission came through. A human diplomatic vessel, small and gray and unremarkable, had broadcast a formal application for council membership on the open channel. Every delegate in the chamber heard it at the same time. Most of them had food in their hands. High Delegate Arvos of the Droon set down his drinking vessel slowly. He read the attached military registry that Earth had submitted, a legal requirement for all membership applications. The registry listed 41 warships. 41. His own border garrison alone numbered 400. He began to laugh. It was not a polite laugh. It was the kind of laugh that filled a room, that made others join in simply because of how uncontrolled it was. The felon delegate, Mora, made a soft clicking sound that passed for amusement among her kind. The Vethkind delegate actually fell backward in his seat. Even the usually composed Saren delegate allowed a thin smile. The chamber feed was still open, still broadcasting. Every word of the laughter went out across the open channel. On the human vessel ISV Perseverance, Admiral Nadia Rose sat at the comm table and listened to the sound of 5 alien species laughing at her species. She did not move. She did not speak. Her coffee had gone cold. She let it stay cold. Fleet Secretary Dalen Cross sat across from her, his hands folded, watching her face for some signal of how to feel. She gave him none. Back in the chamber, Arvos composed himself enough to speak. He told the open channel that Earth's application had been reviewed. He said the word reviewed the way someone says the word glanced. He noted that a fleet of 41 vessels did not meet the baseline threshold for council membership, which required a minimum defensive capacity of 500 registered warships. He noted this with great pleasure. He then did something that was not required by any rule or protocol. He broadcast the full text of Earth's rejection, with Earth's fleet registry attached to the public galactic network, not just to the Council's private archive, to everyone. Every inhabited system, every listening post, every trading station with a receiver. He titled the broadcast, "A Curiosity from the Smaller Species." Delegate Mora stopped clicking. She watched Arvos finish his broadcast and felt something she could not name settle in her chest. She had studied humans for 11 years, not deeply but enough. They were a young species. They had been in interstellar space for less than a century, but there were things about them that did not fit the shape of a weak civilization. The way they explored, systematic, patient, thorough. The way they responded to loss, not with collapse but with adaptation. The way they had in the past decade become very quiet, not absent, quiet. She filed a private report that evening. She wrote, "They did not respond to the broadcast. They did not protest the public posting of their registry. They have gone silent. This is not the behavior of a species that feels humiliated. This is the behavior of a species that expected this outcome and planned for it." Nobody read her report for 6 weeks. On the Perseverance, Ro finally stood up from the comm table. She stretched her neck, picked up the cold coffee and walked it to the disposal unit. Cross waited. He had learned not to speak until she did. She said, "Pull up the Aldrich Corridor survey maps, the ones we filed under commercial exploration." Cross pulled them up. She looked at them for a long time. 3 routes, all passing through Droon-adjacent space, all legally registered under civilian designation 4 years ago. All surveyed, mapped, and quietly flagged in a database that no council species had ever asked to see, because nobody surveyed civilian commercial routes for military value. Nobody except humans. She said, "Tell General Abe the timer starts now." Cross sent the message. Outside the viewport, the stars were indifferent. They did not care about laughter or registries or the bruised pride of a young species. They burned the same way they had burned for 1 billion years. Ro looked at them for a moment, then looked away. She had work to do. In the Sovereignty Council archive, Arvos's broadcast was already collecting responses from across the galaxy. Other species, minor civilizations, fringe colonies, many of them laughing along, a few not laughing, a very few reading Earth's registry a second time and noticing something that Arvos had not. The registry listed 41 warships. It listed their classes, their armaments, their port assignments. It listed everything the law required. It listed nothing the law did not require. Mora read the registry a third time that night and realized what was missing. There was no entry for auxiliary vessels, no research ships listed under military classification, no deep survey craft, no long-range scouts under fleet designation. Either Earth had none of those things, or Earth had filed them somewhere else. She sent a second report. Nobody read that one either. The feast in the council chamber went on until late. Arvos drank well and spoke loudly and told the story of the 41-ship fleet 3 more times to 3 different audiences. Each time he told it, the fleet got smaller. Each time, the laughter got louder. On the Perseverance, the lights went to night cycle. The crew slept. The timer had started. The drone named the outpost Claim 7. They did not ask what the humans had called it. Fleet Commander Sarek arrived with 200 warships, expecting to find a human mining colony and spend 3 days removing it. What he found instead was a series of empty corridors, clean floors, powered-down terminals, and the faint smell of a civilization that had simply walked out. Not fled, walked. There was no panic in the way the station had been left. The storage bays had been emptied in an organized sequence. The power systems had been shut down in the correct order. The docking clamps had been retracted properly. Someone had even sealed the emergency oxygen reserves, a thing you only do if you plan for the station to be used again, or if you are deeply, professionally tidy. Sarek walked the main corridor himself. His boots made the only sound. At the far end of the operations center, one terminal was still active, a single screen, one line of text. "You are being observed." He stared at it for a long time. Then he ordered a full victory report sent to the council. He said the humans had abandoned the station in fear. He filed it as an uncontested annexation. He did not mention the terminal. 48 hours later, the first convoy went dark. A standard drone resupply line, 7 vessels, running a route through the Aldrich corridor they had used without incident for 19 years. No distress signal, no debris, no energy discharge from weapons fire. The convoy stopped transmitting, and when a search vessel reached the last coordinates, it found nothing. Not wreckage, not cargo, not bodies. Nothing. Sarek ordered a full sensor sweep. Clean. He ordered a second sweep with a different array, also clean. He told his engineers there was a calibration error and had 3 technicians pulled off other duties to find it. The second convoy went dark 4 days later, 6 vessels. Same corridor, different segment. Again no signal, again no debris. The search team reported one anomaly, a faint gravitational distortion reading that lasted 9 seconds, then vanished. The kind of reading from a large object moving fast just outside sensor range, or from interference. The report listed it as probable equipment error. Sarek read it twice. He did not sleep well. In the council chamber, Delegate Mora received the incident logs through her private intelligence channel. She read them carefully. She pulled up her research file on human propulsion development and found a paper written 11 years ago by a human engineer, published in a minor journal no council species had bothered to translate. The paper described a drive system that bent gravitational field lines around a vessel rather than pushing against them. The author called it a 30-year research goal. 11 years ago. Mora sat with that for a while. The third convoy went dark 9 days after the second. The search team found something this time. Not wreckage. One cargo container, undamaged, seals intact, floating alone in a stable drift orbit. It had been part of the second convoy. Removed from its vessel, its contents untouched and placed gently in open space. Inside was medical equipment. Surgical supplies. Under the sovereignty's own trade charter, classified as protected humanitarian goods, cargo that could not legally be seized or destroyed in a military action. Sarek stared at the report for a long time. Someone had boarded a drone convoy vessel in deep space, without triggering any alarm, removed the one container holding protected goods, returned it undamaged, and destroyed everything else. They had known exactly which container to spare. That was not the behavior of a species that had run away in fear. He sent a private message to High Delegate Arvos. He wrote that there may be a complication in the corridor. He used the word complication carefully because Arvos did not respond well to words like problem or threat. He asked for guidance. Arvos replied within the hour, "You have 200 warships. Stop sending messages about ghosts." Mora filed her third report that evening. The gravitational anomalies were consistent with a drive system humans had been developing in classified research for at least a decade. The convoy losses were not accidents. She was watching a field test. She recommended an immediate suspension of drone corridor operations and an emergency intelligence session. She sent it to all 5 council delegates. Arvos did not respond. The others sent polite, automated acknowledgments. Only one person, a young aide from the Sarin delegation, actually read it, then read it again, then went to find her superior with an expression that the superior would later describe as someone who has just understood a joke 3 days after everyone else. Back in the corridor, the ghost ships ran silent. Nobody saw them. Nobody was supposed to. Back at Claim 7, Sarek walked the empty station one more time that night. He told himself he was doing a security check. He walked to the operations center. The terminal was still on, the same line of text. He powered it off himself manually, using both hands. It helped a little, not much. The corridor was very quiet, and somewhere out in that quiet, something was watching, and it had already decided how patient it was willing to be. Sarek had not yet decided how afraid to be. That would come later. The council convened an emergency session on a Tuesday. Not because Tuesday had any significance in galactic timekeeping, but because that was when enough delegates were sober and present and willing to sit in the same room. The drone had lost 3 convoys and filed 17 incident reports in 6 weeks. Arvos had finally stopped calling it equipment failure. The session was closed, no public feed, no open channel. Admiral Nadia Rowe appeared as a hologram from the ISV Perseverance. She was in uniform. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her. She looked, Fleet Secretary Cross would later say, like a person who had already had this exact conversation in her head and found it went exactly as she expected. Arvos spoke first. He asked with great restraint for him where Earth's ships were. He noted that 3 drone convoys had been destroyed in legally registered drone space. He said this was an act of war. He said it loudly. Rowe let him finish. Then she said that Earth's 41 registered warships were all accounted for, all docked, all available for immediate inspection. She offered coordinates. She offered inspection times. She offered to have a council observer present. Arvos said that was not what he meant. Rowe said she understood, but that she could only speak to registered vessels under Earth's military designation, and all of those were present and undamaged. If the council wished to discuss other matters, she was available. The session paused for 2 hours while council intelligence analysts ran a search. What they found took another 3 hours to verify, because the first analyst who found it thought she had made an error, and the second analyst who verified it sat quietly at her desk for 10 minutes before telling anyone. Earth had registered a second fleet, not under military designation, under civilian commercial designation, Category 4 Deep Survey and Resource Extraction Support Vessels. The category had been created by the Sovereignty Council itself, 40 years ago, to allow mining corporations to operate armed escort ships in unsurveyed space without triggering military registration requirements. It was a loophole the Council had written for the benefit of its own member species trade companies. Nobody had ever used it for warships before, because nobody had ever built warships small enough and fast enough to pass the dimensional threshold for Category 4 classification. Humans had 1,100 of them over 19 years. The vessels were small, roughly a third the size of a standard drone destroyer. They were fast in a way that the Sovereignty's engineers spent 2 hours arguing about before agreeing was technically possible. They ran on the gravitational bend drive that Mora had found in that untranslated paper. They carried weapons that were, individually, modest. In clusters of 7, their combined firing solution was not modest at all. Every single one had been registered, properly, legally, with full documentation filed in the Sovereignty's own commercial database, under a category the Sovereignty had created, according to rules the Sovereignty had written. When the session resumed, Arvos was very quiet. Ro explained, in simple language, that Earth had not violated any sovereignty law. She noted that the Sovereignty's own Articles of Territorial Defense, Article 9, Subsection 4, which Arvos had helped author 6 years ago, granted any registered civilization the right to defend surveyed territory against unlawful annexation using any vessels in their possession. The article had been written to protect large council species from each other. It did not specify fleet size. It did not specify vessel classification. It simply said surveyed territory and any vessels in their possession. Claim 7 was surveyed territory. Earth had the survey records filed 4 years ago under civilian commercial designation, legal, documented, time-stamped. Delegate Mora, who had not spoken once during the session, made a small sound. It was not laughter. It was the sound of someone who had been worried about exactly this for 6 weeks and felt no satisfaction at being right. Arvos said that Earth would stand down its fleet immediately. Ro said that Earth would be happy to discuss a resolution through proper sovereignty channels. She noted that the articles required a formal territorial dispute hearing before any stand-down order could be lawfully issued. She noted that the hearing process typically took 4 months. She noted that she did not set that timeline, the Council did. She noted all of this very calmly, with her hands still folded. 2 of the 5 delegates quietly requested a recess. During the recess, 2 of them contacted Earth's diplomatic office through back channels, not to threaten, to talk. Arvos did not take a recess. He sat in the chamber alone and read Article 9, Subsection 4, 3 times. It said what Ro said it said. He had helped write it. He had been very proud of it at the time. Cross sent a brief message to General Haruto Abe back on Earth. Session went as expected. Phase 3 is confirmed. Abe read the message. He was standing in a mountain facility deep below the Swiss Alps, surrounded by the tactical screens that had tracked 1,100 ships for 19 years. He looked at the screens for a moment. Then he said, to nobody in particular, "Now we find out how smart they really are." He meant the Council. The question was whether they were smart enough to stop before this got worse. Arvos, alone in the empty chamber, was not asking that question yet. He was still reading the article he had written, still looking for the part where he had won. He did not find it. The drone did not wait for the territorial hearing. Arvos pushed the order through on a Thursday morning, bypassing 3 procedural checks by invoking emergency military authority. 800 warships, full combat configuration. Target, human-claimed space beginning with the Aldrich corridor and ending, Arvos said privately, wherever it needed to end. He told his military command that it was a show of force, that the humans would see 800 ships and stand down, that this would all be finished before the hearing date. Fleet Commander Sarak received the deployment order and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had been in the corridor. He had read the terminal. He had stood in the empty station where a civilization had packed up calmly and left a message. He did not believe this would be finished quickly. He did not say so. He gave the order to move. The 800 ships entered the Aldrich corridor in 3 columns, spread across 4 light towers of space, sensors at full sweep, weapons armed. It was, by any measurement, an overwhelming force. The corridor was wide and the formation was textbook. Sarek had run this exact entry pattern in training simulations 400 times. Nothing happened for 6 hours. Then the first column lost contact with its rear section. Not all at once. 4 ships, then 3 more, then 2. Each one sent a partial signal, a flash of emergency frequency that lasted less than a second, and then nothing. No explosion signatures. No debris on long-range sensors. The ships ahead of them did not see anything happen. There was simply a column, and then the column was shorter. Sarek pulled the lead column to a stop and ordered the other 2 columns to hold. He put every sensor array at maximum range. He waited. The sensors found nothing. Captain Inez Varga, commanding the ISV Red Shift, watched the drone column stop from 11,000 kilometers away. She was invisible to them. Her entire wolf pack, 7 ships running in a bent gravity formation that scattered their sensor profile across a half-light second of space, was invisible to them. She had watched the drone formation enter the corridor with the particular attention of someone who had spent 4 years training for exactly this, and was now quietly pleased to find that the training matched reality. She said to her navigator, "Group 2 is clear of the debris field. Tell them to begin." The second group hit the left column 18 minutes later. Different segment, different approach angle, the same result. The drone columns began to move again, not forward laterally, trying to spread out and reduce their target density. It was the correct tactical response. Varga noted it, adjusted the group vectors, and let them spread. Spreading made each individual ship easier to isolate. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 days. 212 drone ships were destroyed, not in a single engagement, not in a dramatic clash of massed fleets. In 11 days of precise, patient, surgical strikes, a few ships at a time, always from angles the drone sensors were not oriented toward, always before a full targeting lock could be achieved. The human ships did not stay in one place long enough to be tracked. They appeared, struck, and bent back into invisibility before the drone could complete a firing solution. The drone fired their weapons constantly, at sensor ghosts, at gravitational distortions, at the places where the ships had been 9 seconds ago. They fired hundreds of thousands of rounds in 11 days and confirmed 0 hits. Sarek sent a message on day 7 to the open channel. He addressed it to Earth. He said that if the human fleet did not withdraw, the drone would glass human worlds. He used the exact phrase, "glass your worlds." He sent it on the open channel, which meant every species with a receiver heard it. Admiral Rowe received the message on the Perseverance. She did not respond to it. She forwarded it, unedited, to every member species of the Sovereignty Council, every minor civilization in the registry, and the public galactic network. With no comment attached, just the message and its timestamp and its open channel designation. Within 48 hours, 2 council species had contacted Earth's diplomatic office directly, not to condemn humanity, to ask what terms Earth would find acceptable for a ceasefire, and whether those terms might include certain trade and navigation agreements that would be mutually beneficial. They did not mention Arvos. Sarek received new orders on day 9. Arvos had authorized him to strike civilian infrastructure in human-adjacent systems, fuel depots, communication relays, unmanned survey platforms. Sarek sat with those orders for a long time. He sent 3 strike teams. The first team reached its target and found it already evacuated and powered down. The second team found the same thing. The third team found a deactivated fuel depot with a single active terminal in the control room. One line of text. We moved it. You are welcome to the empty space. Sarek did not file that report. He sat in his command chair and looked at the sensor screens and thought about what kind of opponent clears every target before you reach it, destroys your fleet in pieces without ever showing you its face, and still bothers to leave a polite note. He thought about it for a long time. Then he sent a private message to the new Droon Military Council, not Arvos, the actual generals, and wrote 3 words: "We cannot win." It was the first honest report he had filed in 2 months. Nobody fired a shot in week 7. There was nothing left to fire at. Every Droon convoy route crossing near human-claimed space had gone silent, not destroyed, rerouted. But alternate paths added 11 days to every supply run, and the Droon war machine ran on supply runs the way a body runs on blood. Fuel for warships, ammunition, food to colonial systems, parts for border stations, all of it arriving late, if at all. The Droon had not lost militarily. They were losing logistically. The way a great tree dies from the inside, quietly, the roots going dry before the leaves know anything is wrong. General Haruto Abe, watching logistics maps from the mountain facility on Earth, described it to his staff as pressure without contact. No human ship fired at a Droon vessel in week 7 or 8. The ghost fleet simply existed, present and invisible, in every corridor the Droon depended on. Their existence alone was enough. Convoy commanders began filing extreme detours. Some stopped filing route requests entirely and stayed in port, waiting. On day 51, the Droon Military Council removed Arvos from his seat. It was not a polite process. He had authorized the corridor campaign, approved the civilian strikes, and sent 800 ships in without proper intelligence. The formal report called it strategic failure. What no report said, but every general understood, was that he had laughed on an open channel at a species preparing for 19 years for this exact moment, and that laughter had felt wonderful until it didn't. A new speaker was appointed. His name was Veth, young for the position, a reputation for reading reports before responding to them. The first thing he did was notify the council the Droon were ready to discuss terms. The second thing he did was send a message directly to the ISV Perseverance, addressed to Ro personally. It said, "I am told you are the person who built this. I am asking you, person to person, what it would take to stop it." Ro read it twice, then she dictated a reply. 3 things. Complete withdrawal from Claim 7 and all surveyed human territory. Reparations equal to the documented value of the destroyed convoy cargo, not the ships, just the cargo, a precise and modest number. And formal recognition of Earth's survey claims in the Sovereignty Registry, which would cost the Droon nothing except admitting the territory had never legally been theirs. Nothing punitive, no military concessions, no occupation, no forced alliances. Veth sent the terms to his military council. They sat in silence for a while, because they had expected worse and were not sure how to handle not getting it. Mara filed a report she expected people to read this time. She wrote, Earth had leverage to demand almost anything. The Droon colonial supply chains are failing. Over 1,000 human vessels are sitting invisible in every corridor the Droon need. Earth asked for exactly what it was legally owed and nothing more. This is not softness. It is a precise calculation. They took enough to establish permanent legal standing and left enough for the Droon to recover, which means the Droon will never be desperate enough to do something genuinely reckless. This is what long-term thinking looks like. We have not been practicing it. This time, everyone read the report. Sarek surrendered his fleet personally. He transmitted the formal stand-down codes to the ISV Red Shift. He had requested that specifically. He wanted to look at the officer whose group had dismantled 200 ships without losing one of her own. Varga appeared on the comm screen and accepted the codes. She thanked him by sovereignty protocol and asked if his crew was well. He said they were. Then he said, "How long were you watching before you moved?" she said, since before you entered the corridor. He was quiet for a moment. Then, that is a very human answer. She said, yes. The ceasefire was filed with the council on a Wednesday afternoon. 3 pages, 3 conditions. The clerk filed it under active resolutions and went to get lunch. Abe received confirmation in the mountain facility. He looked at the screens tracking 1,100 ships in 17 corridors and said to his staff, "Bring them home, all of them, slow and visible this time." It was the first time in 6 years the Ghost Fleet moved in the open. Across the galaxy, on stations and ships, and in the homes of species that had watched this conflict through whatever intelligence feeds they could access, everyone saw the same thing. Over 1,000 small gray ships emerging from empty space, moving in formation, unhurried, back toward a pale blue dot that the galaxy had laughed at 8 months ago. Nobody was laughing now. On the Perseverance, Cross watched the fleet assembly on the tactical feed. After a while he said, "She'll be pleased." Abe's voice came through the comm from the facility on Earth. He had been patched in to watch the formation. He said, "She built it for this. She didn't build it to use it forever." Cross thought about that. Then, is that a human thing, building something powerful and then choosing not to keep using it? Abe was quiet for a moment. "It's supposed to be," he said. The ships came home, visible, unhurried, all of them. The vote was held on a morning when it rained inside the council station. That was not supposed to be possible. The station had sealed corridors and climate systems maintained by 3 separate engineering teams. But a water recycler in Section 9 had developed a fault, and for reasons the engineers would argue about for weeks, it expressed itself as a fine mist drifting through the main council chamber for 40 minutes. The delegates sat in it. The light through the viewport turned everything soft and gray. Fleet Secretary Dalen Cross sat in the human delegate seat and thought it was a strange way to begin the most important vote in his species' history. The resolution was simple: full admission of Earth into the Galactic Sovereignty Council, with complete voting rights and veto privileges equal to any existing member. It had been drafted in 14 days, which by council standards was extremely fast. The normal process took 2 years. 3 delegates had pushed for speed. The Droon had not objected. Mora called the vote. The Felon voted yes. The Saren voted yes. The Vethkind voted yes. The Orani voted yes. There were rumors Earth had already opened trade talks with them privately. Speaker Veth, representing the Droon, voted yes. Unanimous. Cross took a breath. He reached into his jacket and removed a folded piece of paper, actual paper, printed, not a screen, and unfolded it. Rose's statement. She had written it herself by hand and given it to him with one instruction: read it clearly. He did. He read that Earth had not come to the stars to be welcomed. It came because the stars were there, and humans had always moved toward things simply because they were there, and because something in them could not comfortably stop. He read that Earth asked for a seat not because it needed the Council's permission to exist, but because the Council's rules shaped how existence worked in this part of the galaxy, and humanity preferred to help write rules rather than only be subject to them. He read that Earth held no lasting anger toward any species in the room, that it understood the instinct to dismiss something small. Humans had done that to each other for most of their history, and had learned slowly, at great cost, that dismissal was usually more dangerous to the one doing it than the one receiving it. He folded the paper. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Mora made a soft clicking sound Cross had not heard from her before. He thought it might be the Felon equivalent of a long exhale. Veth said formally, "The Droon acknowledge the new member. We welcome Earth." No flourish, he meant it. Cross thanked the council and said Ro would attend the formal ceremony in person at the next regular session. She had, he explained, a prior commitment. At that moment, Ro was on the bridge of the Perseverance, 3 light towers from the station. running a patrol route that would look routine to any sensor watching her. What no sensor was watching was the formation of 1,100 ships running in bent gravity silence behind her, spread across a quarter light year, present and invisible, heading for a training exercise in the outer survey zone. The Ghost Fleet was still the Ghost Fleet. Admission to the Council had not changed what it was. On the bridge, the navigator pulled up the Council vote result on the secondary screen without comment. Ro glanced at it. She looked at it for a moment, then looked back at the stars. She said, "Log it, send a confirmation to cross." The navigator said, "That's all." She said, "That's all." It was not coldness. It was the disposition of someone who had worked toward one outcome for 19 years and understood that achievement was mostly the moment when different work began. The seat was not an end. It was a position, a chair in the room where the rules were written, which was exactly where a species needed to be if it wanted the rules to be fair. General Abe, watching from the mountain facility, poured tea and stood before the logistics screens. 1,100 green signals, moving in formation, doing nothing dramatic. He thought about the 19 years of budget arguments, engineering dead ends, legal filings, classified databases, and quiet patience that had produced those signals. He thought about Arvos laughing in the chamber, broadcasting the rejection to the whole galaxy. He thought about the line Ro had said to Cross that first day, "Good, let them laugh." He drank his tea. It was a good morning, not a celebratory one, just good in the solid way of mornings where the work has been right and the result has followed from it. Outside the viewport of the Perseverance, the stars burned exactly as they always had. The difference now, the only difference, was that humanity had a voice in the room where their systems were named, their lanes were mapped, their futures were arranged. Not a loud voice, not a threatening one, just present, just heard. A chair at the table. No more, no less. It was enough.